I was selling a group of SMI programs in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, 2,600 people, the Canadian Life Underwriters Association. I found out from the man in charge, he said he wouldn't pay me my fee. They couldn't pay me much of a fee. The Treasury didn't have much money in it. I said, I'll make you a sporting deal. This is over the telephone. I said, give me 15 minutes selling time at the end of the day. I was the last speaker of a 2-day conference. Give me 15 minutes selling time. I'll pay my own expenses, and I don't need a fee. The guy said, you're kidding me. I said, no. We made a deal. I got Tom Norfleet. I think George Knight met Tom Norfleet years ago. Tom Norfleet went up with me, and I had him go out and buy a window from a lumber yard because I wanted to use an illustration. I want to throw a baseball through a plate glass window. The story I told then, I made a talk, and the title of my talk then is How to Plan Your Life for Eminent Success. Okay? When I threw the ball through the plate glass window, I said, if you want to be successful, you have to throw tradition out the window. So in a way, I was even talking about audaciousness then, wasn't I? But that was using an illustration. Then I had Tom Norfleet go to a model agency and hire 40 models. Cost $25 a piece. It was $1,000. So look what I got at risk now. Because with 2,500 people, you got 15 minutes. How are you going to hand out the order form for an SMI program? Right? So I figured, well, divide 40 of them around, we could get the job done. But what I didn't know, Tom Norfleet had him in the back, coaching him and training him how to do it. And then he had a contest, telling me he was going to give him a prize for whoever got the most contracts signed. You know how I knew that? What part of the sale that took place I didn't exactly approve of. One of the girls was sitting in the lap of a guy looked like yourself there, about your age and about your baldness, and she was rubbing the top of his head. I knew Norfleet had gone too far with his training. To make a long story short, guess how many I sold? Out of 2,500, not very many. 125. 125 programs, not too bad. The net profit on 125 was $15,000. The program didn't cost anywhere near what it does now. It's called the Personal Success Package at that time. I think George Knight may remember that, maybe a few of us were around at that time. Okay. The interesting story, the next day when we got on the airplane to go home, the headlines of the second section said themselves masters of the foot and the door technique met the master today. And there was a guy there from the newspaper writing the story about it that didn't like salesmen. He didn't like me, he didn't like them, but he loved what I did to them. And he called it doing it to them. Well, let me tell you what happened. I've received letters from over half of the 125 people I made subsequently after that, at the invitation of the people that bought to their companies, over 50 different talks. We sold over 5,000 additional programs to people that bought the first 125 between myself and the distributors, and that's how we got all of our business in our sales organization. That's how we got Ted Kemper, the general director we have up in Canada. That's how I met all the key people that we have in our Canadian organization. All came out of that one talk because of the boldness and audaciousness and the courageousness and the risk-taking that we took at that particular point in time. And then the newspaper, even though they did a reverse on us, a very negative article, ended up being a boom. Guy from Calgary, Ontario, Canada said, I saw that article. He said, could you come up here and do that same thing in Calgary? And if you did, would you do it exactly the same way? That's interesting, isn't it? Charlie Skinner in Dothan, Alabama. Met him in Orlando. I was in a contest with Franklin Life, and I wanted to get into a company, so I started calling friends of mine in the life insurance business, even though they even worked for other companies. And I said, you got a tough sale, if you got a payroll deduction situation, or you got something like that you want to get done. And he said, why? And I said, well, I'm in a contest, and I said, I've got to pull off a miracle. And he said, what's that? And I said, something like 100 sales in the next week. And he just roared, and I said, come on, tell me somebody, you know, Charlie, that we can get in with. So he said, well, I know a guy that owns a bakery in Tallahassee, Florida. I said, I'll meet you there. I flew up on the airplane, didn't have a car. He met me there. I'd already known what success you could have from being a guy's chauffeur, right? Guy's 6 foot something tall, wearing a big Texas hat. He said he couldn't see me, that he's on his way to Panama City. And I said, well, meet your chauffeur. Worked before, why wouldn't it work again? By the time we got over there, you know what I talked about the entire trip? His life story. Where did he come from? What did his mother and father do? Where did they go to school? Tell me something about your spiritual experience. Tell me something about your kids. I knew him from his toenails to his eyeballs, his white corpuscles and his red corpuscles. I mean, there wasn't anything I didn't know about him by the time we got there. He just completely opened it up. When we got there, he said, and I had not said one word about myself, nothing about my company, nothing about anything. And when we're getting out of the car, getting ready to go in, he said, I got to go to a meeting. He said, by the way, what can I do for you? And I said, I want you to set up an office for me in here and set up a payroll deduction and a partial participation. I want to sell all of the employees you got in your bakery here on a contract. I had his complete trust. He said, consider it done. Went in there. The manager was totally hostile. He said, if we're going to buy, we can buy from so-and-so. I've known him a long time. He's in the Kiwanis Club with me. And he said, no, I want to buy from this young man. I sold 104 out of 103 people. You know how I sold one of them? An air conditioning man came into the room where I was, set up a ladder, and he heard, while he was fixing the air conditioner, heard 4 successive presentations. And he said, is that just for bakery employees? Are you kidding? John Lewis was going broke at an automobile dealership. And I said, John, I would love a glass of water. I said, John, it's your lucky day. And I said, tell me about your business. I worked with him all day that day and all night. It was 4 o'clock in the morning when I went home. We designed window streamers on there. We designed a telephone talk, and we got the phone book and got all of his salespeople in there. I talked to them about prospecting. They didn't have any visual kit. We made up a visual kit. We worked, you might say, 24 hours without stopping. I came back the next day and kicked it off with a talk about enthusiasm, and we turned John's automobile dealership around. And when John tells the story, he cries. You know what John did for me? He bought the largest policy I'd ever sold, and then he gave me a 5-carat diamond ring. A 5-carat diamond ring. I had it appraised then for $6,000. That's not very much. You know, it was not very much then, but it later became worth $80,000. And ended up being stolen, and it was insured for $35,000, so I got $35,000 out of it. But that's the story. And through John Lewis, who do you think I sold? All of the automobile dealers within 100 miles of the place. They said, you're not going to believe this kid. He doesn't care anything about himself. He'll give and give and give until he can't give anymore to help you with your business. Now, do you get the idea of what I'm mixing in here with the audacious and the boldness and the gifts? You have to love people. You have to care about them. The more you pour out, the more you have to pour. The more you give, the more you have to give. John Lewis. Selling with audacity is fun. You can imagine the kicks you get doing this. Come on, Loudy Low, it's fun. It's fun. That is enough to entice me. I believe in enjoying what I do. I have fun selling. Even if I get to the point that my profession is boring, then I'll find a way to make it exciting again. That's what I did. If I got to start at the back page and do the presentation backwards, I'm going to do that. You have to let the little child inside you out and have some fun, but the fun is just the beginning. You can expect all sorts of benefits from bold selling. Let me give you some benefits. Number one, the first benefit you'll enjoy will be success where others have failed. It's inevitable. One reason salespeople hesitate to sell with boldness is that they're afraid to appear different. Isn't that amazing? They do not want to appear different. Like my insurance agency I had in Miami, Florida. The average insurance agency in Miami, Florida all had about 8 salespeople in it. I asked the question, why, if it would work with 8, why wouldn't each one have 80? No one could answer the question. I said, how about 800? So I recruited 832 people in one town. How'd you like to have a distributorship in Melbourne with 832 people in your one distributorship? I did. I got sued by the Prudential. All 42 people with Prudential Insurance Company walked out one day and came over to me. You know what I told them? I said, I don't know that you could make any more money with me than you can with Prudential. But with me, you'll have a life-changing experience, because what we do at our meetings is talk about what you could become if you use your God-given potential. And I guarantee you, if you expose yourself, we'll give you a chance to grow as a person, which will spill over, it'll ricochet over and cascade down to your spouse. It'll improve your relationship with your children. It'll change the life of the sphere, of the network that you have as a human being. I can guarantee you that, because I'd seen it happen over and over again. Here they came. The money part of it is ancillary. It's just a side benefit. Hey, I'm doing what I'm doing now if I had all the money in the world. But if the unusual approach won't work, dare to be different. Try, you might fail. But the ordinary approach has already failed, I think. If you fail with an audacious approach, you won't be any worse off than you already were, right? I mean, what do you got to lose? Isn't that one of W. Clement Stone's affirmations? Got everything to gain by trying, by all means try. That's one of the affirmations we have in our affirmation stack, isn't it? Yes. And a new approach offers an opportunity for success. Harold Lanigan. Do you know the first call I went on with Harold Lanigan? Do they have you have an Air Force here in Australia? You have a National Guard. They have kind of a National Guard thing here. An Air Force Reserve kind of thing. That's what I'm trying to get to, an Air Force Reserve. Well, they have that there, except that they don't let civilians fly on the planes. So Harold was going up to Orlando, Florida one time on a flight, and he said, why don't you come along? And he said, I got all day, but you could teach me to sell. And I said, well, how do I get on the airplane? He said, well, you just go down the end of the runway, and just before I take off, you jump on. Well, I used to be in the paratroopers. It's like flying in a tin can. There's no even padding in just those seats. You can hear that thing rattling. I thought things were going to come apart flying up there to Orlando. And I wanted to do really good. So I called on Lee Boswell, who was my center of influence. We called on his CPA, my first call. It was my first call to show Harold how to sell. CPA, had a glass eye like a banker. I mean, this guy couldn't be more stiff. I couldn't get a worse prospect for me first thing in the morning. And I tried my presentation. I told all my emotional stories. I tried everything I could try. I told tear-jerkers, everything emotionally I could. I had emptied my box. I had to think of something. So I got up on top of his desk. Now, have you got this picture? I got up on top of his desk. And I said, someday when you're up with St. Pete and you're strumming that harp, I said, would you reach down out of the sky and take that $5,000 check away from your wife? Well, I didn't know he was going on a vacation after lunch with his family. I had absolutely scared him to death. Because I told him, when I sold life insurance, I didn't say, if something happens. I used to say, you're going to be graveyard dead. They're going to put you underground. or they're gonna burn you. You're gonna be in a little. Your wife's gonna use you for an egg timer and still have you working. I used to tell them the truth, and they loved it. They loved it. Here's the first guy selling life insurance, just talking about. I said, I'm telling you, you're gonna be dead, and that's what I came to talk to you about. One of my illustrations I used to use back then was I'd take a picture of a person. It was really good. If I really wanted to sell him a big policy, I'd get his friend or his wife to get me a picture of him. I'd take it down to an artist and paint like he would look when he was 65 or 75 years of age, even though he was only 30. And I'd take his regular picture in, and I said, I didn't come to see this man. I came to see the man you're going to be. Well, I'd be stunned. Yeah, absolutely stunned. And I said, it's close, isn't it? He said, yeah, it looks a little bit like my father. And I'd say, I want to talk to you seriously. And I said, I know you're confident and bold, and you don't think you're going to die, you don't think you're going to get sick. But I said, I'm telling you, you're going to be graveyard dead. They're going to put you in a box. They're going to put grass on it. They're going to put a stone at the head of it. They're going to play music. It's over someday. Count on it. And I said, now let's talk about that. Well, I think that's bold, isn't it? They loved it. They loved it because nobody else did it. It was a different approach. Different approach. Mr. Connors got mad and chased me out of his office. Told me never to come back. I mean, that man did not like me. And I thought, well, what do I have to put together here? I've got to salvage this thing some way. What do I got to salvage? I've got to salvage my relationship with Mr. Boswell, right? He's my center of influence. Mr. Boswell had 5 daughters. They all married preachers. Mr. Boswell has been like a father to me. I've gained more advice. He's helped me with my Christian pilgrimage more than any other man. I took my daughter Leslie last year and went to Florida just to meet him because he's close to 80 years of age. And I said, you got to meet a great man. Mr. Boswell is the richest man in Orlando, Florida, and wears khaki pants and a khaki shirt. Drove an old Studebaker automobile then, drove a Tampa Nugget 5-cent cigar. Lived in a shotgun house in a town and in a state where it was 100 degrees temperature without an air conditioner, because all of the money he made he gave away, gave to Christian evangelical organizations. He's one of my role models. Part of what I do with what I make is the result of the training and teaching and the example of Mr. Lee Boswell. So I love him very dearly. So I wanted to maintain that relationship because I was sure I had just blown it. So I called him and asked him if we could have lunch. Well, Lee Boswell has a sense of humor that you would not believe, and I did not appreciate. Because when I got there for lunch, Mr. Connors had already talked to him and told him, I don't know who that kid is, but let me tell you all the things. So he started just, and you know what Mr. Connors did? When I got there in Lee Boswell, we were going to eat in the Piccadilly, in the cafeteria. He was roaring laughing. He was just beside himself. He came unstitched. He came apart at the seams. And he said, you did it. You did it. No one has sold him. He said he didn't buy from you, but he asked me to introduce him to an insurance salesman. He wanted to buy $25,000 before he went on his vacation this afternoon. He said, I was afraid I wasn't going to get back to have lunch with you. Well, he didn't buy from me, but he bought from somebody else. I was only trying to sell him $5,000. Look what a favor I did the guy. Lee Boswell used to take me to his friends just to watch me sell them. He had a Dr. Bryant that couldn't be sold. I just thought of this one this morning, and I wrote it down here. And guess how we got Dr. Bryant? Even Lee Boswell couldn't get an appointment with him. He said, no, Lee, you got something. He said, I know you got something up your sleeve. You wouldn't be coming to see me. And Lee says, we'll get him. He said, let's go sit in his car in the parking garage and wait till he comes out from an operation. We sit in his car, and he gets in the car, and he said, let's see you sell him without telling him. I said, what are you talking about? He said, let's see you sell him without telling him what you're going to sell him. I said, come on, Lee. He said, well, you said you were good. Let's see you do it. He came. I said, well, tell me about his family. He said, well, he's got 5 kids. And I said, that's all I need to know. I took 5 applications, put an X on them. He got in the car. I said, Dr. Brown, I know you're busy. I know you've been in business deals with Lee Boswell. You trust him. And sign these 5 applications, and it's going to be $1,000 apiece. And I can get the money from your secretary, and then I'll write you a letter and tell you what you bought. He looked at Lee and he said, "Is he for real?" And he said, "Yes, he's for real. I've done a lot more than that on my family." He signed all 5 applications. We got out of his car and he left. I've never seen Dr. Bryant again in my entire life. And I've seen him only 5 minutes. I wrote him a letter and told him what he bought. I got the $5,000. That's boldness and audacity, isn't it? Do you enjoy these stories? Yes. Grant's known me for 13 years now. I've never told these stories before. Are you enjoying them, Grant? Okay. And the only thing I regret is he's got that video camera pointing straight at me. He's Grant. How much? I was out on the golf course with Bill Armour, a friend of mine I told you I met in the milk truck, and we were talking about using enthusiasm in selling. And I said, what would be the most audacious and bold and enthusiastic and dynamic thing you could do? I said, let's make a wager and see who can make the most extraordinary and unusual sale. He said, I'll bet you I can go to a doctor's office in my golf outfit with my golf bag over my shoulder, get an appointment with the doctor and sell him, and keep the bag on my shoulder. I said, you're on if you keep the cleats on. We went to see Dr. Roger Stockton in Fort Lauderdale. His wife's name was Helen. Bill Armour went in, and he told the nurse the same thing. I gave him a little bit of a hint, the life or death matter, right? He gets in to see the dentist, sells him a life insurance contract. About 10 years later, Dr. Roger Stockton inherited $18 million of the Loop in Chicago. He has been on at least 30 hunting trips with Bill Armour, and Bill Armour is his closest and dearest friend. I mean, he thinks more of Bill Armour than he does his brother or his family. That's how tight their relationship is. And it all happened that day just out of a joke on a golf course. See what can happen? Bold selling gives you the thrill of winning over the unknown and the unproved. When I founded SMI, no concrete proof that the product would sell, right? There wasn't any such thing then. Absolutely no such thing. And we were condensing self-improvement books. They thought I was a loony bird. In fact, there was an article written one time about me, and in a very negative, disparaging way about the once great life insurance salesman who's out selling, condensed books. And it was an idea that wouldn't work. But I was determined to make it work. And one of the loans that I secured at the outset, when I had spent, when you get in a new business, you put the capital in, you spend it, then you need more capital to expend it. Okay, I couldn't get a loan. I went to see Mr. Howard Hamilton at the First National Bank in Waco, Texas. No luck. Their financial statement had a little section in it that said Farm Department. And I thought, well, he's an old fogey and he's stiff and he's got a closed mind. So I went out of there. I wrote across their Farm Department, and this is what I wrote in. 1960 Creative Ideas Department. I give it to his secretary, and I said, send that back in to him. He came to the door and he said, come on back in. How much do you want? I said, $10,000. He said, sit down. I got $10,000 after I got thrown out of his office with, a flat no, and I got back in again from being bold and audacious. And what did I have to lose? He already told me no. What else could he tell me? But he liked my idea. And the next year, when they reprinted their financial statement, he took off that Farm Department. Now the company belongs to M-Bank. It's a big bank holding firm in Dallas, Texas. When you act with audacity, you are constantly in the midst of excitement. You don't really know the outcome, but you push ahead with positive expectancy. An interesting statement. You don't really know the outcome, but you push ahead with positive expectancy. Lots of people try to discourage bold selling. They will criticize you for attempting something when you can't predict the outcome with sureness. What they really mean is no one else has done it, therefore it's obvious you can't. And I'm telling you, I've done enough experiments that that's not true. The difference is that when you are bold, you don't need an exact role model from someone else or even from your own past. You know you will succeed because you have all the basics we talked about earlier. And here's what they are, and I'll recite them again. A clear goal, determination, personal responsibility, and an intuitive sense of an appropriate, creative, and spontaneous showmanship. Now let me show you appropriate, creative, spontaneous showmanship. I was selling, I mentioned I sold black people on a debit in Columbus, Georgia, and I was raised in California. Well, they had a social difference between whites and blacks at that time. They still do some, but they had an enormous amount of disparity then. You've read about that, certainly, in the United States, especially in the South, okay? And here I am, somebody from California, where they had every kind of person in my class in California. Blacks, whites, Asians, didn't make any difference. And nobody seemed to know that much difference. And so I thought, well, I have to capitalize on this, because I thought it was funny the way they treated each other. You'd go in a restaurant to eat, seriously, go in a restaurant to eat, it would be a circular restaurant, with the stools, where you sit on the stools, and they had chicken wire down the middle. First time I told one of those redneck white guys in Georgia, I said, I want to ask you a question. I said, you got blacks eating on that side of the screen, you got whites eating on this side of the screen. I said, who cooks it in the kitchen? I said, aren't they all blacks? He said, all the pots and pans go in the same dishwasher and they all come out. I said, who are you trying to kid? And we don't need wise people like you around here, buddy. That's what happened to me in Georgia when I first went there. It was a joke. It was an absolute farce. Yeah, my water's doing fine. I just need to drink it. Thanks. So one day it's raining. I didn't have my coat. I thought, well, this is great. So on a mud street, they're all looking out, right? I walk down the center of the mud street and start walking in to see them with mud on my shoes. And they said, why are you out here in this storm? And I said, because what I want to sell is important to talk to you. And here I'd get around the fireplace in there and half dry off and sell everybody in the room, go out and walk down the mud street again. It was the greatest sales day of my life up till then. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't been walking down the mud street. If I'd had a coat on and was in an automobile and went up there, they'd say, come back some other time. I'm just showing you examples that have happened to me from being bold and courageous and audacious. In addition, you have visualized the outcome. You can believe in your success because you've already seen it mentally. It must be mentally accomplished before it can be materially accomplished. William James said, the one thing that will guarantee the successful conclusion of a doubtful undertaking is simply faith in the beginning that you can do it. When you have seen yourself accomplishing your goal, nothing can stop you. Seen yourself, when I say seen yourself, that's vividly imagining. Then you ardently desire, and you sincerely believe, and then you enthusiastically and bold and courageously act on it, and it inevitably comes to pass. It does, it does. You push ahead. If it takes audacity, you're audacious. If it requires boldness, you're bold. I started playing tennis when I was 45 years of age, and those of you who listened to some of the programs have heard the illustration on there before. What is the first thing I did when I started playing tennis? I went and got a wood-burning set and painted the sign on there. It says, I'm a championship tennis player. I couldn't meet the ball with the racket. But you have to have the affirmation first. Hung it over my desk where I could see it every day. And then I thought, well, who are the best tennis players in the world? John Newcomb is a championship tennis player. Rod Laver's a championship tennis player. Roy Emerson. I found out where they were. Went to Rod Laver's camp. Went to Roy Emerson's camp. Went to John Newcomb's camp down in South Texas. Went to Vic Braden's camp. I found the person in the world that was the number one player in the world that was my age. His name is Russell Seymour. He's number one in the world in the men's 55s. He was at that time in the 45s. I found out who was the number one player in the state of Texas. His name was Robert Trogolo. In fact, he still is. He's been number one 6 out of the last 8 years. Nobody's ever done that before. He was ranked in the top 30 in the world. And then I wanted a tennis court so bad at my house. I had no place to put it. I even had architects drawing what it would look like with the tennis court over the top of my house. My wife didn't like that at all. And I said, well, you got to keep an open mind when you're doing these kind of things. I lived on a hill. Grant's seen my other house. I lived on a hill on a bluff. I was sitting out there one day on the edge of the hill, and here's the lake down there below, about 150 feet. And I saw a bridge across the lake, and I said, nuts, if they can build a bridge all the way across the whole lake, I could build a bridge out here off of my house, and I could build a bridge to the bridge. I'd have my tennis court here. Well, the first cost on that thing was going to be $450,000. But I was almost getting ready to do it. Then what happens when you have a goal and you tell people the goal, you magnetize the condition you seek. Like calls to like, doesn't it? So a woman knocks on my door. She said, I want to buy your house. I said, it's not for sale. She said, I'll give you anything you want. And I said, come in. I loved it. I loved it. She said, everybody in town knows what your goal is. I just looked at a house. It's on 4 acres. It's a little older house, but you can fix it up like you want, but there's a place for a tennis court. I said, let's go look at it. I took Jane and Leslie over there. This was 6 years ago. In 1 hour, sold her my house and bought the other house. All that fast. First thing I did, obviously, was take all the plans, put somebody to work, building the tennis court. I told Jane, we'll do the tennis court first, we'll do the inside of the house second. You got to have your priorities. We didn't have to do the inside of the house. A banker had owned it previous to me. He had just done it. I live in my house is about 50 years of age. 50 years old, my house is. We've been there 6 years. About 10 years ago, somebody spent a fortune on the inside of it, so I just simply did the outside. But let me tell you what's happening when you set a goal and you do something like this. When the payoff comes, it comes like bananas in bunches because you're open to, exposed to ideas. I'm playing with Russell Seymour, taking a lesson from him. And I said, they have all these condos up here and they're all empty. How long have they been empty? And he said, 2 years. He said, don't touch them. He said, this place is going to stagnate. Well, I know that everything that goes down goes up, right? I couldn't wait to get off from the lesson. The last 15 minutes of the lesson, I didn't hear what he said. I called a guy by the name of Bill Adams, who was an attorney for the people that started the World Tennis Tour. They live in Dallas, Texas. And he sold me 20 of the condominiums for no money, took them back on a triple net lease. He just wanted to get them off their books. I have no money. I'm renting them back to them. So I've sold them, almost all of them now, for $100,000 profit. This was 7 years ago. I've made $2 million on the side playing tennis. And my brother thinks I'm a goof-off. I have a real hard-working brother. He's got a screwy work ethic. He works 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, something like that. And I go down to the Cayman Islands, and when he comes over, I'm always out with the tennis match. And I'm kind of the family bum. I'm never going to amount to anything. And I told him, he said, he said, how can you ever amount to anything playing tennis? I start telling all these stories of my bold actions that I've made from playing. And that's from boldness and audacity. Develop boldness and the ability to sell with audacity by having faith in yourself and the product you sell and in your ability to handle the particular action you choose to pursue. You can have the type of faith when you are confident that you possess, that your purpose is right. Listen to this closely. For you and others. Your purpose is right for you and others. And your motives are pure, and you are not trying to harm or manipulate anyone else. Like you have to have, I'm talking about your value system now. When that is true, you can believe in the outcome. You know that whatever you need will be found. You will draw to yourself what is needed to bring your goal into reality.